The morning sun barely broke through the Arlington mist. But the black tomb guard stood unwavering, his boots clicking in perfect rhythm. 21 steps. Pause. Turn. Repeat. A crowd watched hushed as his rifle gleamed against the sacred marble of the tomb of the unknown soldier. Then came the shout, sharp and venomous, from a man in a suit worth more than most people's homes. "You're just a prop," he sneered, stepping over the rope, his voice daring the guard to flinch. The crowd froze, sensing a storm. What no one knew, not the tourists, not the man's trembling assistant, was that this black tomb guard, silent and stoic, had faced enemy fire in Syria and carried scars no one could see. And in seconds, one reckless act would unravel a billionaire-esque empire and reveal a truth about power no money could buy. Before we dive into this story, where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. And if you believe that values like honor, courage, and sacrifice still matter, join us in keeping their legacy alive. The autumn morning at Arlington National Cemetery was crisp. The kind of day where the Virginia air carried a faint chill, sharp enough to sting the lungs, and the leaves glowed in shades of gold and crimson under a pale, cloud-streaked sun. The cemetery stretched across rolling hills, its rows of white headstones standing like silent sentinels, each one etched with names, dates, and stories of sacrifice. At the heart of this sacred ground stood the tomb of the unknown soldier, its marble surface gleaming with a quiet, unshakable dignity. A crowd of tourists, families, and veterans gathered at a respectful distance, their voices hushed, their footsteps soft on the stone plaza. Some clutched guidebooks, others held cameras, but all felt the weight of the place. A place where history wasn't just remembered, but lived. James Carter, a sentinel of the tomb, moved with a precision that bordered on the mechanical, yet carried a profound grace. 21 steps. Pause. A sharp turn. The click of his polished boots echoing in the stillness, the rifle shifting from one shoulder to the other with textbook accuracy. His navy blue uniform was immaculate, every crease sharp, every button gleaming. The tomb guard badge on his chest caught the morning light, a small but proud symbol of his duty. At 28, James was tall, 6'1", with brown hair cropped close to his scalp, and green eyes that stayed fixed on an unseen point in the distance. His face was unreadable, a mask of discipline forged through years of training. In a tour in Syria where he'd earned a silver star for pulling his squad through a brutal ambush, his scars, both visible and hidden, were carried with the same quiet resolve as his rifle. The crowd watched in reverent silence. A young boy, no older than 8, tugged at his father's sleeve, his voice a loud whisper. "Dad, why does he walk like that? Doesn't he get tired?" The father, a broad-shouldered man in a flannel jacket, knelt beside his son, his voice low but warm. "It's about respect, Liam, for the soldiers who gave everything and never came home. Those guys in the tomb, they don't have names anymore, but he's making sure we don't forget them." Nearby, an elderly man stood with his teenage granddaughter, his worn coat adorned with a regimental pin from World War II. Walter Grayson, 78, had seen combat in the Pacific, and his weathered face held a mix of pride and sorrow as he watched James's measured steps. He leaned down to his granddaughter, Sophie, his voice rough but steady. "This is what duty looks like, Soph. Not many understand it anymore." Sophie nodded, her eyes wide, clutching a small American flag she'd bought at the visitor center. The reverent quiet was shattered by the low hum of a sleek black Mercedes SUV pulling up near the Plaza's edge. Its polished surface reflected the golden leaves, and its presence felt out of place, like a shout in a library. The driver, a nervous man in a black suit named Ethan, scrambled to open the rear door, but Marcus Sterling was already stepping out, his impatience radiating like heat. At 55, Marcus was the embodiment of corporate power. Silver hair swept back with meticulous care, a bespoke charcoal suit tailored to his lean frame, and a Rolex Daytona glinting on his wrist, its gold face catching the sun. His gray eyes, sharp and calculating, scanned the scene with a mix of disdain and boredom. "To slow, Ethan," he snapped, brushing past the driver without a glance. "We're on a schedule, and I don't have time for dawdling." His executive assistant, Clara Bennett, a sharp woman in her mid-30s, hurried to keep pace, her navy blazer pristine and her iPad clutched tightly. She tapped at the screen, her voice professional but edged with caution. Sir, the Tech Summit venue meeting is at 2 in D.C. We could have handled this remotely, save some time. Marcus waved her off, his tone sharp. I don't trust photos or virtual tours. Clara, if Sterling Innovations is going to host the biggest AI summit this city's ever seen, I need to see the space myself. He gestured dismissively at the cemetery. Though why anyone would pick this dusty old graveyard over a modern conference center is beyond me. Marcus's voice carried, slicing through the hushed reverence like a blade. A few tourists glanced over, their brows furrowing. A woman in a red coat whispered to her husband, "Who does he think he is?" Walter Grayson's jaw tightened, his hand resting protectively on Sophie's shoulder. He'd heard men like Marcus before, men who thought their wealth made them untouchable. Marcus strode toward the tomb, his polished shoes clicking loudly on the stone path, drawing more eyes. Clara trailed behind, her expression tense, her heels clicking softer but no less urgent. Sir, she ventured, her voice low, this is Arlington National Cemetery. It's not just a venue. It's a graveyard. Marcus cut her off, his scoff loud enough to turn heads. A monument to the past. Nothing more. My company's reshaping the future AI, quantum computing, global markets. Oh, that's real power. This. He waved at the tomb, his Rolex flashing. This is a tourist trap. Plain and simple. The crowd's murmurs grew, a mix of discomfort and irritation. A man in a veteran's cap standing near his wife muttered, typical DC hotshot. Thinks he owns the place. A young couple with a stroller stepped back, the mother whispering, this guy's trouble. Walter leaned toward Sophie, his voice barely audible. Some folks think money buys respect. They're wrong, Soph. Marcus, oblivious to the growing unease, stopped just beyond the velvet rope that separated the crowd from the tomb's plaza. His eyes narrowed as he studied James, who continued his march with unwavering precision. Look at this guy, Marcus said, his voice loud enough to carry across the plaza. A living statue. What's the point of this? Clara shifted uncomfortably, her fingers tightening around her iPad. Sir, the black tomb guards are elite soldiers. They're not just. Marcus interrupted, his laugh sharp and cutting. What, Clara? Marching in circles like a wind-up toy? My engineers code algorithms that run the world, while this guy plays dress-up for selfies? He pulled out his phone, snapping a quick photo of James. I'll use this in my keynote. Tradition versus progress. Guess which one wins every time? Walter's face darkened, his hands clenching behind his back. Sophie whispered, Grandpa, why is he being so rude? Walter's voice was low, steady. He's got money, Soph, but no class. Men like him don't understand sacrifice. The crowd's tension grew palpable. Father explained to his daughter that man's not supposed to talk like that here. It's disrespectful. Marcus, sensing the attention, leaned into it, his voice rising. You know, Clara, in Silicon Valley, we'd automate this job. A robot could march better than this guy and cost less. He checked his watch. A deliberate gesture meant to underscore his importance. Time's money, and mine's worth more than anyone in this crowd. James's face remained impassive, his eyes fixed forward. But those who knew the black tomb guards could see the subtle tension in his posture. The coiled readiness of a soldier who defaced worse than a loudmouth CEO in the deserts of Syria. His tour there had taught him to stay calm under fire, to hold the line when chaos threatened. Marcus, sensing no reaction, grew bolder, his voice taking on a mocking edge. Hey, soldier boy, what's the pay like for this gig? Bet my driver makes more than you, and he doesn't have to stand like a mannequin? Ethan. The driver winced, his face flushing as he looked away, clearly embarrassed. Clara clutched her iPad tighter, her professional mask slipping. Sir, maybe we should not now, Marcus snapped, his eyes still locked on James. I'm curious. What's it take to get a reaction out of this guy? It's discipline, or just plain stubbornness? The air grew thick with tension, the crowd's murmurs falling silent as they watched the confrontation unfold. A young boy clutching his mother's hand asked, Mommy, is that man allowed to yell like that? His mother shushed him, her eyes wide with unease. Walter moved closer, his old military instincts kicking in, his weathered hands clasped tightly behind his back. Sophie stayed close, her small flag trembling in her grip. Marcus, emboldened by the lack of response, raised his voice further. You know who I am, Marcus? Sterling, CEO of Sterling Innovations. My company's market cap is bigger than half the countries in NATO. I've dined with presidents, closed deals that keep this economy running. You're a prop in a history lesson, nothing more. He paused, waiting for a reaction that didn't come. James's silence was a wall, unyielding, his steps continuing. 21, pause, turn, shift. Marcus's smile tightened, a flush creeping into his cheeks. He wasn't used to being ignored. In his world, people jumped when he spoke, bowed to his wealth, feared his influence. His voice dropped, but the edge in it was sharper. "Let's try this," he said, his tone dripping with condescension. "I'll donate $1 million to whatever veterans charity you pick if you say, 'Good afternoon, Mr. Sterling,' right now. Go on." The crowd gasped softly, a ripple of shock passing through them. The boy Liam clung to his father's leg, whispering, "That's not fair, Dad." The father nodded, his jaw tight. "It's not about fairness, son. It's about respect." Walter's eyes narrowed, his voice low as he murmured to Sophie, "This man's about to learn something the hard way." James didn't flinch. His steps remained steady, his rifle held at the precise angle, his discipline a silent rebuke to Marcus's arrogance. Marcus's frustration boiled over, his face reddening. He stepped over the velvet rope, entering the restricted area around the tomb, a clear violation of Arlington's rules. "You hear me?" he shouted, his voice echoing off the marble. "I'm offering you $1 million. Acknowledge me." Clara grabbed his arm, her voice urgent. "Sir, you can't do this. You're not allowed." Marcus shook her off, advancing toward James, his polished shoes scuffing the sacred stone. The crowd held its breath, their phones lowering as they sensed the situation spiraling. Walter took a step forward, his granddaughter grabbing his arm. "Grandpa, no, don't." But Walter's eyes were locked on James, a silent signal of solidarity from one soldier to another. James stopped mid-step, an unprecedented break in protocol that sent a jolt through the crowd. He turned, facing Marcus directly, his sunglasses reflecting the CEO's flushed, furious face. His voice was low, steady, carrying the weight of command honed in combat. "Sir, this tomb honors those who gave their lives for this nation. You're standing on sacred ground. Step back and show respect." The words hit like a thunderclap, their calm authority cutting through the tension like a blade. The crowd was silent, stunned by the rare sound of a black tomb guard speaking. A woman in the back wiped her eyes, whispering to her friend, "He's right. This place isn't a stage." Marcus froze, his confidence faltering for a split second, his mouth opening but no words coming out. Then his ego surged back, his face twisting with rage. "Respect," he spat, his voice rising to a shout. "I fund this country. My taxes pay for your little parade. You don't tell me what to do?" His hand shot out, a sharp slap connecting with James's cheek. The crack echoed across the plaza like a gunshot, a red mark blooming instantly on James's pale skin, the outline of Marcus's fingers stark against his face. Gasps erupted from the crowd. The young boy Liam buried his face in his father's jacket, scared. His mother covered her mouth, her eyes wide with shock. A veteran in a wheelchair clenched his fists, muttering, "That's too far." Walter surged forward, his old body moving with surprising speed. But Sophie grabbed his arm, pleading, "Grandpa, please." The crowd's murmurs turned to shouts of outrage. A man yelled, "You can't do that!" Another called out, "Get him out of here!" James didn't move. His jaw tightened, the red mark burning on his cheek, but his posture remained perfect, his rifle steady in his hands. His eyes, hidden behind sunglasses, held Marcus's with unflinching resolve. A soldier's calm forged in firefights far more dangerous than this. Before Marcus could speak again, 2 Arlington security officers appeared, moving with swift, coordinated precision. Their uniforms were crisp, their faces impassive, but their movements practiced as if they'd trained for moments like this. One grabbed Marcus's arm, his voice calm but firm. "Sir, you're under arrest for assaulting a service member on duty and violating restricted grounds. You'll need to come with us." Marcus struggled, his face crimson, his voice rising to a frantic pitch. "Do you know who I am? I'm Marcus Sterling. I'll have your jobs. My lawyers will bury this place. I have meetings with senators this afternoon." James's voice cut through, calm and authoritative, each word deliberate. "You assaulted a soldier guarding the tomb of the unknown. Sir, your meetings don't matter here." Your money doesn't matter here. The officers tightened their grip, pulling Marcus back toward the edge of the plaza. He shouted, his voice cracking with desperation. This isn't over. I'm Marcus Sterling. I own half of DC. My company's tech runs this country's infrastructure. But his words sounded hollow, like a man shouting into a void. Clara stood frozen, her iPad slipping in her hands, her face pale as she watched her boss unravel. She'd seen him dominate boardrooms, intimidate competitors, but this was different. This was a man facing a power his wealth couldn't touch. Ethan, the driver, retreated to the SUV, his phone already to his ear, dialing the company's legal team, his expression one of dread. Walter stepped forward, his voice steady as he addressed the crowd, his regimental pin glinting in the sunlight. That uniform isn't a costume, he said, pointing at James. That man earned the right to stand there. 2 tours in Syria, a silver star for pulling his squad out of an ambush under enemy fire. The tomb he guards, it's for the soldiers who never came home, whose names we'll never know. That's what this place means. The crowd nodded, some wiping tears, others standing straighter, as if Walter's words had reminded them of something fundamental. A veteran in a wheelchair saluted James silently, his hand trembling but proud. A young woman clutching a guidebook whispered to her friend, I didn't realize what this meant. I get it now. James spoke again, his voice softer but no less powerful, each word carrying the weight of his duty. This tomb isn't about me. It's about the unknown soldiers who gave everything so we could stand here today. Guard it to make sure they're never forgotten. He turned, resuming his march, the red mark still visible on his cheek, but his bearing unbroken. The click of his boots resumed, steady and precise, a rhythm that seemed to anchor the crowd. Walter approached, his voice thick with emotion, his granddaughter at his side. Thank you, son, he said, his eyes shining. For them, for all of us. James gave a slight nod, the only acknowledgement he'd offer, his focus returning to the tomb. Marcus was led away, his protests fading as the officers escorted him to a waiting security vehicle, parked beyond the plaza. His shouts grew distant, swallowed by the cemetery's vast silence. Clara hesitated, her professional composure cracking as she watched her boss disappear. She turned to Ethan, her voice shaky but firm. Get the legal team on this, she said. NPR, this is a disaster. But her eyes lingered on James, a flicker of admiration replacing her usual efficiency. She'd spent years managing Marcus's demands, but for the first time, she questioned the man she worked for. His wealth, his power, it all seemed small against the quiet strength of the soldier before her. The crowd began to disperse, but the air felt different now, heavier with meaning. Parents knelt to explain to their children what they'd witnessed, their voices hushed with reverence. Liam, the young boy, tugged at his father's sleeve again. Is that soldier a hero, Dad? The father nodded, his voice thick. Yeah, Liam, he's a hero. Not because he fought back, but because he didn't have to. He stood for something bigger. The mother, her eyes still red, added, This place is about remembering. Liam, that's what he's doing. The boy nodded, clutching his small flag tighter, his young face serious. As James continued his march, the golden leaves fell silently around him, drifting across the plaza like a quiet tribute. The tomb stood as it always had, a beacon of sacrifice, its marble glowing under the autumn sun. The crowd's phones stayed lower, their earlier urge to capture the moment replaced by a deeper need to simply witness it. A veteran in a baseball cap approached Walter, his voice low. Reminds me of my old CO. Never backed down, never showed off, just did the job. Walter nodded, his eyes still on James. That's the way of it. Duty's not loud, steady. The narrator's voice, warm and resolute, closed the story, its cadence measured, but powerful. In a world obsessed with power and wealth, some things remain beyond price. Duty, honor, country, they're not bought or sold, they're earned. James Carter stands watch not for fame or fortune, but for those who can't. For the unknowns whose sacrifices built the freedoms we hold dear. What would you do if you faced disrespect on sacred ground? Would you speak up, stand firm, or simply bear witness? Share your thoughts. Honor those who serve, and never forget the cost of freedom.